continue your meeting. So why don't we join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Jones, if you would call the roll, please.
Call the roll for the 7 p.m. regular city council meeting on December 11th. Councilor Zeed. Here. Councilor Cameron. Here. Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane. Present. Councilor Colley. Here. Councilor Preston.
Present.
Councilor Vogel. Present. Councilor Wallace.
Here.
Councilor Wright.
Yeah.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
All 11 present.
All right. Late files.
There is one late file, which is an Order 525, the grant acceptance for 9/11 training grant.
Motion to waive the rules and accept the late files.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Everything present. And one present.
All right, public comment.
Got it plugged in? Sure. There you go.
Thanks. All right, so back to the start. First for public comment is Bruce Menon. Name, address, and you have 2 minutes.
Bruce Mann, 148 High Street. Thank you for 2 minutes here. I could take longer, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Councilor Vogel for many years of service to the community. My relationship with Councilor Vogel and his commitment to public service goes back before joining the City Council. When he and I were both on Youth Commission together. And while Bruce and I have not always agreed, I have never doubted his commitment and his willingness to advocate on behalf of marginalized folks and citizens of Newburyport. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for your service.
Next is Donna Holliday.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. I'm here tonight because, as the former mayor, it was an absolute pleasure to work with Christine Wallace, and she took office, and most of her term was initially was in the middle of COVID, so it was a kind of different way to be oriented to being a city councilor. But thank you for all your work on Ward 4 and for your passion and commitment to Atkinson Common, as well as the Pioneer Field. And then the traffic control and trees you've done. You really were a great example of constituent services to your ward. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best. And then Bruce. We started decades ago holding signs at the Hope Church where we first got to know each other. And I was so impressed with his work on the Youth Commission and being able to move that forward. And we can all thank Bruce for being instrumental in hiring Andy Egmont, who has with us to this day and continues to serve our youth with great service. Now, certainly Bruce and I, as many have said tonight, have not agreed on a lot of issues, particularly the rail trail going down Broadfield Street, but we won't go there, Bruce. Thank you. You've done a great job, whether it was on planning and development, budget and finance, public safety. You really care about the city. You care about the people that you serve. And it was a pleasure working with you, serving with you as a counselor and then as mayor. I wish you the best of luck as you finalize your transition to Maryland. And we will miss you, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next is Kristen Hunter.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kristen Hunter. I live at 4433 Merrimack Street. I'm here to make a comment about a letter and comments I've made to various committees. I've been coordinating with Christine Wallace in Ward 4 for almost 4 years now about the dangerous situation on Merrimack Street. I've made a lot of comments. I haven't gotten a lot of feedback or collaboration from any committee with any solutions to help make Merrimack Street safe. I would really like this at the top of the agenda so that transition for Christine to Ben occurs. There have been no plans that I'm aware of. Also, Pioneer Park, the street safety around that new plan is non-existent. The residents around that neighborhood were not considered. The traffic's going to increase because 2 ball fields have closed. We'll increase traffic up Merrimack Street to that park. And as far as I know, there's no funding for that. And then the 5-year street plan for Merrimack Street is non-existent again. There are many things that could be done to improve the safety, paint, signage, 4-way stops, things that are not super expensive to help make the street less dangerous. I hope those are taken into account moving forward as Christine transitions out. And thank you for listening for the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Andrew Simpson.
I'm Andrew Simpson, and I have Greenleaf Street, and I am here this evening to thank Bruce Vogel. Thank you for 2 decades of public service, for your diligence and research and focus on issues, and for showing up, for juggling family, business, and public service demands with a seriousness of purpose and good humor. And also thank you for your entrepreneurship that has always been community-oriented. I will not repeat my letter to the Daily News on the allegations against Bruce. I think it speaks for itself in commending Bruce and explaining why I think he acted appropriately. But I would like to again urge those who want to challenge Bruce's right to serve out his term to think about the damage they will do to this city, this body, and the public confidence in our elected officials, and for what end. Fresh off his own election defeat, a former city councilor has even accused Bruce of crimes. The same councilor wrongly claims owning a house here is irrelevant. While not a requirement for voting, it is one proof of residency. There was a process for addressing residency out questions through the Board of Registrars. Bruce's accusers apparently chose not to follow that process, probably because they have no case. This is not about brushing anything under the carpet. It's about dirt that never should have been thrown in the first place. Please don't resort to political theater. In response to my letter, one councilor reprimanded me for suggesting that those who are pressing this case against Bruce are being uncivil. But I do think it is potentially one of the most uncivil events that I have ever seen before this council. I want to thank you, Bruce, and I want to thank Councilor Wallace, also Christine Wallace, also for her public service.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Next is Candace. I can't read the last name.
Good evening. My name is Candace Mitchell. I live at 29 Jefferson Street, and I have a prepared statement, so bear with me. It makes me rather sad to come before you to speak this evening. I'm responding to Mr. Eigerman's letter and to the overall issue of Councilor Vogel's legitimate presence on the council. In his highly charged letter, Mr. Eigerman claims that Councilor Vogel is not only a criminal, but also a thief. Those are strong accusations. But these, I assert, are made without a basis in fact, and perhaps more out of a desire to cast aspersion on Councilor Vogel. Further, Mr. Eigerman's letter is filled with detailed references to the city charter, but he fails to mention that the true basis upon which residency is determined rests on a process of review undertaken by the Newburyport Board of Registrars. That's Chapter 51, Section 38, General Laws of Massachusetts. Councilor Vogel complies with the requirements of residency. He is a registered voter in Newburyport. His car is registered in Massachusetts, and he still stays in his home in Newburyport at times. He did visit his family over Thanksgiving, as many of us do, and he has intended to move to Maryland for some time.
Please, Please wrap it up.
Councilor Vogel has been clear about his intentions.
Ms. Mitchell, please, your time's up.
It's up already? Oh, my God. I didn't get to the other.
Sorry.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vogel.
And last is Charlie Tontar.
Oh, you have it included in the minutes? Yes. Thank you.
Charlie Tontar, 29 Jefferson Street. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilor Wallace for her 4 years of service to Ward 4. I very much appreciate it. And it's not an easy job, and I know that. And thank Councilor Vogel for his service to the city. I'm going to comment, I'm going to try to stay within 2 minutes, on the issue of residency and what it means to remove from the council. My experience in this is 10 years ago when I first ran for council. I ran against an individual who many people in the city asserted did not live in the city. As a matter of fact, after I got elected, someone threatened to sue me because I did not do some of the things that some of the councils are doing now to point out that he did not live in the city. So I researched it, and I learned a couple of things. One of the things that I learned is there's no definition of removal from the city, all right? But there is case law on that, and the case law, I mean, it's pretty clear, all right? To remove from the city, all right, is taken to be removed from, not present on the voter rolls, all right? And so if you are a registered voter, you are a resident of the city, right? Ipso facto, if you're a registered voter. All right, so what does it take to become a registered voter? The burden of proof is on you to prove that you are a registered voter. But once you are on the rolls, it's very different. All right, so Chapter 51, Section 38 of the law, which I suspect the city solicitor has referred to the council president, is very clear on this. It says that the Board of Registers shall not remove someone from the voter rolls and therefore from residency. All right? Unless there are 5 pieces of information presented, right? One piece of information if the individual has died. If anyone has a certificate of death, bring it forward. All right? A second is if there is an affidavit.
Your time is up. Thank you, Councilor Tontar.
Just remove the back of hers and then see.
And that is it for public comment. Thank you all. Next is mayor's comment. I know he's around. There he is.
Here he comes. It's flying.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me here tonight, everybody. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to be probably a lot less entertaining than public comment. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah for all those who celebrate. Just a reminder, for the next couple nights, they will still be lighting the menorah down on Market Square at 5:30. All are welcome. 2 weeks today till Christmas, which is incredibly exciting. Newburyport Chamber of Commerce will host the last 3 invitation nights downtown on Friday. Come on down. The last 2 have been really well attended, and I know the last one's going to be great as well. Newburyport Fire Department will hold their annual Santa Parade around town. You can go on the website to check out the route. That's on Friday, December 22nd. Starts at 4 p.m. at the fire station. Just an FYI, I have set the date for the State of the City address. It's going to be Wednesday, February 28th here at City Hall Auditorium. We will have the 2nd annual Public and Community Service Awards that night as well. That was a huge success last year and just a really fun part of the State of the City, so we're excited to bring that back for year 2. Community Preservation Act applications are due by Friday. We have about $1.2 million to distribute this year, so the CPC has a lot of already worthy projects to go through. So if you still have, you're still waiting to get that in, it's going to be in by Friday at 12. I will just bring up Whittier real quick. It was nice to hear from the superintendent tonight, and I don't think the need was ever a question when we've been talking about this for the last couple of months. I think we realized that something needs to be done at Whittier, but a $500 million school is definitely not the answer. So I'm hoping that there's still time for people to go back to the drawing board because, you know, Newburyport's not the only one struggling with this. I think there's been 9 communities already to send letters to the Whittier School Committee and to the MSBA, which is also holding a vote on Wednesday, asking for at the very least, a pause in this vote. The clock starts if the MSBA vote is approved on Wednesday for 120 days. You could easily have this in late March, April, and not in January from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. On a day where, who knows, we could get 12 inches of snow that day too. So it's a lot to risk getting a representative vote on a day like that when there's so much at stake. It's not just about whether debt exclusions can pass and whatnot. It's about not being involved in the process from the start, and then at the 11th hour saying like, hey, here's your bill. So that's been really disappointing, and you know, it's too bad. I felt like we did get a little snippet of that tonight, but I think we probably could have asked Maureen probably about 30 to 70 more questions about the process and some of the things that have gone on. So. In any case, I think we need to continue talking about it, especially this elected body. I do think, even this weekend, I went to 3 different parties, and I had someone come up to me and had no idea about this, which is just crazy, because it could actually affect everything we're trying to do here in Newburyport for the next 30 years. So please keep talking, talk to your neighbors. There's still time to contact your Whittier School Committee representatives. One of them's behind me, before Wednesday, and you can also reach out to your state representatives, state senators, state Representative Shan, where there's many people advocating for us right now, and they could use all the support we can give them. And just finally, thank you to our outgoing councilors, Bruce Vogel and Christine Wallace, for your service to Newburyport. I really think, you know, public service is just the absolute best thing you can do for your community. Both of you did it well at times, and I wish you the best of luck going forward. I know you'll get your nights and evenings back, and I know you both have, you know, different things that you want to do, but again, serving the city of Newburyport is special. So again, it takes a lot of time and effort and time away from family, and it's not easy. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions? All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along.
Consent agenda?
Yes, please.
That consists this evening of the approval of the minutes from November 27th, and then you slipped right on down to items being removed from various committees. Budget and Finance, orders 512, 513, 516, 517, 518, 519, order 336, order 504, 505, transfer 153. Community Services, appointments 438, 439, 440, 441, 437, and 443. Orders 514, 515, 474, 510, General Government, Communication 461, Communication 468, Order 239. Planning and Development, Appointment 444, Communication 494, Communication 500, Ordinance 164. Public Works and Safety, Communication 462, 511, 412, 459, 479, 505, Order 449, and lastly, Ordinance 103.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Present. Motion to receive and file the mayor's update? Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. First reading appointments, none. Communications.
First communication is an application 167, State Automotive Repair Secondhand Vehicle License.
Motion to collectively move 167 and 168 to licensing permits.
Second.
Councilor Zeeb?
Respectfully, this motion will not make any sense because if you refer them to committee, they will die on December 31st. So we can either make a motion to carry them over immediately to the next session or do an emergency preamble and approve them tonight. I'm not well-read enough to make that motion on these two, but would entertain them as a member if somebody knew what was happening.
Councilor
I'd like
McCarry?
to make a motion to amend my motion to refer 67 and 68 collectively to license and permit and invoke Rule 7H to move them to the next legislative session.
Second.
Discussion?
Point of order, can it go to the committee, or does it have to come into the consent? It has to come in again, I think, as new business.
We've had this one? Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've been pondering this all week. I think it's cleaner if we just do 7H, which puts them over to the new session, and then the new session comes in. The committee may have different members, it will have different members, so then you can refer to whichever committee it is. Make sense?
So I'll amend my,
Amend your amendment.
Third time's a charm.
amend my individual amendment.
Double
So moving
second.
forward to 7H. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Gotcha.
All right.
Motion collectively to receive and file communications 521, 22, and 23,
Second.
which is the market landing maintenance memo, letter from Jared Agerman, letter from Andrew Simpson.
Right. We're meeting Wednesday night,
Steve,
and we're meeting Wednesday night, so everyone's got the memo for the market landing one anyway.
the second on that one.
I'll second.
All those in favor of receiving filings, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Gotcha.
All right.
That's not a president's no.
All right. No transfers, no second reading appointments, orders.
Make a motion to move Order 520, 21, 22, and 23, and invoke 7H and move it to the next legislative session.
Wait, I'm sorry. No, point of,
Councilor Khan?
yes, sorry. 3 of these orders will be related to an order that's already in Budget and Finance, so my apologies, but that would be Order 21, 22, and 23, and we could get to that item in Budget and Finance, so maybe, oh gosh, so maybe, I don't know, do we want to vote on that item now?
Councilor Zede?
Yeah, actually, I'm prepared to make a motion for an emergency on actually all of these, including 520, if the
Yeah,
council will give me a
I'll
chance to
amend it
make the
then.
argument for it, and then we can deliberate. So I'll make a motion for an emergency preamble on Order 520 to start, which is a gift acceptance on the Central Congregational Church.
Second.
So on this, specifically on the emergency, as far as the timing goes, this was submitted by the Finance Department. You know, it's one of those gifts that came in at the wrong time relative to our packet cycle. I did do some research with the department head that it's relevant to, so I hope I'm in a position to answer questions. I'm asking the committee, the council, pardon me, if they would grant the emergency, and we can deliberate on it tonight. So stop there, or just on the emergency.
So, motion on the floor, is there an emergency? Did you put, okay, so. Yep. Vote on the emergency.
Yeah, you can do a voice vote, means 2/3.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the emergency, or say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve now.
Second.
So this is a $2,000 gift from the Central Congregational Church. It is destined for the Council on Aging, is the department that's responsible. You can see in the packet the form is used. I should have been more clear that the reason for the emergency is just so they can get into use faster. And because of the gift amount and the nature of the information I turned up, I thought it was a sensible ask, so thank you for that. So I'll give you a couple of Q&As that I asked in anticipation, questions that probably would have been asked had it gone to committee. So when will the funds be spent? It's anticipated they'll be spent by the end of FY 2025. This is specifically for assistance for seniors who need it. So the next question I asked was how will those who get assistance be selected? The new director of the COA, Sarah Landry, replied to my questions, so that's where these answers are coming from, and said the need for assistance will be determined by the COA social worker. It would be available to those aged 50 and older. It would be available to those living in Newburyport and the surrounding area, so it is not limited to just Newburyporters. I want to mention that. But the primary criteria, sort of the bar, is that they already meet the criteria for fuel assistance. That becomes sort of the bar. Is this a continuation of an existing program, or is this a new program? The transportation aspect of this is an existing program, so it's based on funding that's available that's largely made through gifts. And as far as the co-pay assistance, the current director was not aware that this had been offered in the past, so that aspect would be new. And in terms of how long this program would run, it really runs until the funding runs out. So if an additional gift is made, it would come back through. If the funds are exhausted, then they're exhausted. How can residents apply? So to receive assistance, local residents can meet the social worker they can call the senior center to get hours or make an appointment and things like that. The maximum is $100 per person in a given year. And again, I just reinforced it's not just for Newburyport residents, but this is not being supplemented by city funds. It's just simply the gift. So that's the case for your consideration. The motion is to accept the gift, and that's it.
Thank you, Councilor Z. Further discussion? Councilor McCauley?
Yeah, I'll vote to, given the time crunch we have, I will vote to support this, but I do think that this item should, this use of funds through the city department needs to be looked at in the new term. Reason being is there's the anti-aid amendment, and this is a direct aid to direct people coming from a city department, and the application is subjective. And so, as I said, I know where the funds came from. It's the chocolate tour, which splits it up a number of different ways. I think it's a worthwhile event going forward, but I do think that we need to continue our transparency of how we allocate funds through generous donations like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving Order 520, say aye.
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 So next, I'll make an emergency preamble motion and a waiver of the rules on Order 521, which is the first of 3 related to short-term rentals.
Second.
So in terms of the emergency or the ability to handle it tonight, as the counselor at large to my right mentioned, this is essentially the outcome of something that had already been referred to this Committee on Budget and Finance. It was recommended through the work that was done of the committee that the form of it needed to change a little bit, and we really didn't feel comfortable taking one order that had been referred, breaking it into 3 orders. This seemed to be more transparent to assign them each 3 new numbers, but because the committee has done the work on it, I do think we're at a position and a time to debate the policy, so I'm asking for your consideration. And I will not say the same things, but I'm making the same requests for the other 2, and I will ultimately be receiving and filing the one that's actually in committee, just to be clear on where this is headed.
All right, discussion on the emergency preamble.
Okay, emergency preamble and approve?
Just emergency to start.
For all 3.
I'm going to do it for each one because it's a state vote. I
Yeah.
want it to be as clean as it can be.
Yep. All right. All those in favor of Order 521 being an emergency preamble, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Now a motion to approve Order 521. So I'm going to give you kind of the committee report in a sense, and as well as sort of the broad. So as you know, we recently completed our work on short-term rentals, having 2 readings and passing an ordinance. The state has made a local option available that cities and towns can adopt should they choose. So first thing is, there's an existing 6% excise tax on rooms that already gets collected. Newburyport already has that. In fact, you have to have that in order to accept these. So we're not debating that tonight. This is an additional tax that is, again, a local option. And so now that we have a short-term rental ordinance in place, we are in a position to do this. As with most things with the state, it's incredibly, I think, complicated, maybe unnecessarily so, but effectively what they've done is they've created 3 separate votes sort of that need to be taken, or at least 2 at minimum, and 1 that we will also take as well. So the first one is to adopt the so-called first local option community impact fee. That's this order. The second order is to accept the second local option community fee, and they're very clear that they actually have to be 2 separate votes, which is why they're 2 separate orders, and one of the reasons why they needed to be broken up coming out of committee to be informed with how the state looks at it. I'm going to explain what the fees are. And then the third one is the state offers some measure of latitude in terms of how you allocate those fees. So you take in the funds, what can you do with them? So now I'm going to get back to this specific first local option. This is a fee that applies to each transfer of occupancy of a so-called professionally managed unit. And a professionally managed unit is defined as one of 2 or more short-term rental units in the same city or town not located within a single 2 or 3 family dwelling. That includes the operator or owner's primary residence. So to make that English for you, it basically has to be a building that has more than 3 units in it to be considered. So we're talking about apartment buildings and things like that. Based on our conversation in committee, this does not seem overly applicable to Newburyport, both given the land use, sort of what we have in the city, but also the way that we work through our short-term rental and what we ultimately ended up passing. With that being said, we can't skip this. If we don't accept this, we cannot accept the second one. So while the general feeling in the committee and in speaking with the finance director is, this isn't going to, maybe zero, in fact. I mean, it's hard to know exactly because you never know every possible scenario. But this first community impact fee is not expected to generate a lot. In fact, I don't think any of these, unfortunately, will generate a ton because of, again, it doesn't quite mix with how Newburyport is working. And so, but there could be something there, and that was the effort. So in committee, all three of these are coming to you effectively from a policy perspective with a recommendation for approval. The third one, which was the allocation, is the one where there was a little bit more conversation and some amendment, but the committee did recommend essentially adopting the fee. So I'm going to yield there. Perhaps a sponsor wants to add something more, and then I'll take you through the second one.
Thank you, Councilor Zede. Councilor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. This was one of the things we talked about too in the debate when we heard the comments around, being able to, affordable housing is one of the things, and we'll talk about the allocation piece. But I do want to, the chair did a great job. So the only thing I'm just going to add is, and I don't think you meant to skip over it, but one of it is, just going to that definition is the professionally managed is if there's 2 or more short-term rental units that's operated by the same operator, but not their primary residence. So again, that's the professional management. So it's kind of maybe loosely that investor piece of it just because of the number of units they own. But yes, this is the one we have to do first to get the other one. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Further discussion? All right, yes.
I just had a thought. If you're concerned at all about review by the state, you might want to waive the rules also.
Okay, I wanted to do one motion. So I'm going to make a motion to waive the rules so that this can be heard on the first night or discussed on the floor. Is that the rule that you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, we had in the past done emergency preamble and waive the rules
Yes.
as one.
Yep.
But we didn't do it, and I was concerned.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye. Aye.
And I just asked for a roll call on the actual matter so the clerk can certify it to the state comfortably.
So I'd like to, the original motion approve, first and second.
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
President.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
So now I'll do a motion for an emergency preamble and a waiver of the rules together against Order 522.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second. Second.
So very similar conversation, again, more funky language, I think, from the state, but this is the second local option community impact fee, and this is a fee that may be adopted as a local option on short-term rental units located within a 2 or 3 family dwelling that includes the owner's, the operator's primary residence. So now we're just, it's a very weird funnel, but the first one has to be more than a 3 family, so kind of getting bigger. This one is 2 and 3 families specifically, so not bigger than 3 and not smaller than 2. So not single family homes and not 4 families or larger like apartment buildings. So, this is the one that probably has some potential across the city based on, again, coalescing our new short-term rental ordinance with the land use patterns in the city. And, it goes on to say that it's only after 2019 and so forth, but we're well beyond that, so I'll leave that. And again, because we have now adopted the first one, we can now, by second vote, now we can adopt this one. So that's the story.
Gotta love the state. Further discussion? Roll call.
Roll call on approving Order 522. Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue? Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Okay, last is a motion for an emergency preamble and a waiver of the rules to accept Order 523, but not an adoption, just the waiver of the rules and the emergency first.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so this is the third part, which is the allocation. So whatever monies do come in, the default sort of position is that 35% of them get dedicated towards the Affordable Housing Trust. This is per state law. That's the bare minimum. You can allocate more than 35% towards your Affordable Housing Trust if you wish, in fact, all the way up to 100%. And this is where we spent some of the time in committee, probably the bulk of the time. And through that conversation, came up with this idea here that you're seeing now effectuated into language, which is that 50%, so in 15% more than the minimum required, would go towards the Affordable Housing Trust, and then the other 50% would go to the Plum Island Beach Fund. Let me explain two things about the Plum Island one. First of all, the genesis of that conversation was the idea that the bulk of the short-term revenue would likely originate from the island, and it would be nice to see some of the funds stay there. That was brought to us by at-large Councilor Mark Wright, and so we had a conversation about that. And in terms of using the beach fund, as you know, the beach fund exists. It was created, I want to say, about 2 or 3 years ago now, so it's an existing vehicle. It does have some parameters to it, which we don't need to rehash tonight, but it's generally dedicated. It's not just Plum Island generally, it's really more towards the beach. There's a nexus to erosion and in fact, to the harbor master. You may remember we've tapped this. This is not the hydrant fund. I just want to be clear about that. So, that's where the idea comes to from here. I've lost Ethan. Is this a 2/3? Yeah, so I wanted to double check myself, but it's 2/3 to create the dedication, so that to pass this, unlike the other two, which were really a bare majority, 6-5. This one requires 2/3, and then once the money is in the funds, then they can be spent pursuant to the rules of those funds. So the Affordable Housing Trust has a board, obviously a commission, if you will. The trust is the correct term. The Plum Island Beach Fund is upon recommendation of the mayor and approval of the city council, so that they don't just become monies anywhere. So that's kind of the story there, but the idea behind using the Plum Island Beach Fund was that it existed, and creating a new fund would have required a new ordinance, and that just seemed like a heavier lift than maybe was necessary. Again, relative to the idea that unfortunately this may not generate a ton of revenue even with the second option, and you could probably see why just based on the definitions. So that's kind of the story. This was the compromise or the discussion in committee, and again came out with this recommendation, but then we had to form it correctly into a vote. So
Got it.
I'll leave it there.
So question, Councilor McCauley?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Council President. In the actual language, it says 50% to the Affordable Housing Trust or local infrastructure projects. Is that, I know it's related to, general law, MGL 64, but who makes that decision? Is it the trust that makes the decision, or what?
So in that statute, it specifies that at least the 35% must go towards affordable housing or local infrastructures. It further goes on to say that it'll go into a receipts reserved for appropriation account.
Right.
So this language would provide that 50% of the revenue goes into a receipts reserved for appropriation account for affordable housing or local infrastructures. It would then require a recommendation from the mayor to the city council, who would then approve it under the guidelines.
Okay, so if I may, we may be talking past each other. So either it's going to the trust or it's not, right? So if it goes to the trust controls the spending process that goes through it. If it kind of sort of goes to the trust but goes through receipts reserve first, then it's a receipts reserve fund, right? Is that?
That's correct. It would not be going directly to the Affordable Housing Trust, as the law does not allow for that direct transfer.
Thank you for the clarification.
So,
Just a point of information, I think the language in the order as I'm reading it, it's to affordable housing or local infrastructure. It doesn't mention the Affordable Housing Trust. And I think Councilor McCauley said that trust was in there.
I think one original thought was that perhaps the monies went directly to the Affordable Housing Trust, which isn't the case.
Right, yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Councilor Khan, you had your hand up?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. Further discussion? All right. Roll call.
Roll call on approving Order 523. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take a break.
All right, I'm up. All right, so next up, Clerk Jones, Order 524.
524 emergency preamble, this is a project letter with respect to the Whittier building project that we just heard about. That's followed by Order 524, which is a letter that speaks for itself.
Motion for a waiver on the rules and to approve the emergency preamble.
Second?
I lied, I'm not going to take a break, I thought I was.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Present. Present. Who was the second on that, I'm sorry?
Counselor.
Cameron?
I'm happy to.
All right, so
That
order,
leaves us with the Whittier building project letter, Order 524.
so the letter is similar to other letters that other municipalities have been sending the MSBA and local, the chairperson of the Whittier School. It's basically asking for sufficient time to postpone the vote, opportunities to consider the design itself. I don't know if folks were watching other of the communities' meetings, but they never seem to be a plan B. So I think that opportunity and that's delaying the vote would be the key one. And
Second.
Councilor McCauley?
Yeah, I have a question, probably for the sponsor on this. You know, we sent a letter, I understand the need for the letter and the timing, et cetera, along the way, but we sent a letter on the 26th, we did the same thing. We did an emergency preamble, and we said, in that letter, we asked them to do a town-by-town vote and tie it to a local vote for death authorization, and then we required to, we asked them again to, as part of that same letter, to delay the vote. So does this letter supersede the other letter? And since they haven't really responded to the last one, do we have two letters at the same time asking for conflicting things that are in there?
I don't think it's so much conflicting at this point. I think right now, we're just trying to get back in front of the MSBA. I think the main thing right now is to try to delay the vote, or at least get folks to understand delaying the vote would give us a chance to further discuss it. So it doesn't give you a good answer, but
I'm just asking, we already sent a letter, so I'm just, so we're choosing
to send another letter.
to send another letter.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
are. Further questions? Roll call. Sorry?
So roll call on Order 524. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane. Present. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes. All right.
Just if I might,
Yes.
President, this is directing me, my intention is to send it to Whittier and to MSBA and to work with the mayor to
Yes.
send
Yes.
whatever is needed. I'm not sure about the 11 communities, whether we want to send a copy there.
I would work with the mayor on that one.
Okay?
I know that had been the intent for other communities, which they sent letters to us, so.
Great, thank you.
Committee items, budget and finance.
Excuse me, point of order?
Yes.
We have Order 525, and I respectfully ask that we have a motion to waive the rules and have an emergency preamble first on this matter.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Counselor. Now, budget and finance. Counselor Zede, you are back up.
Okay, thank you. Let me just get back to the right page here. So I'll start with a motion to approve Order 512, which is a gift acceptance in the amount of $1,000. This is a gift acceptance for PAARI. It's a police department-driven grant like the last one we just accepted. It's a fairly low dollar amount in the amount of $1,000. And it's related to learning about a new drug called xylazine, I think is how you might say it. And so the committee recommended that we accept it 3-0.
Discussion. All those in favor of accepting, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
All right, next up is a motion to accept Order 513.
Second.
Okay. So this is another gift acceptance, and I'm sorry, I cannot find the page that I was on. Here we go. All right, 513. So this is $15,000. It comes to us by way of Mike Hennessy, but it's the Friends of Newburyport trees. It will be used for 2024 planting 25 to 30 trees. There was no immediate information available about the location of said trees, but they are the typical 2 years of watering included, and we'll work through the tree warden and I guess also the tree commission to work down the list of locations. So it's a 3-0 recommendation from committee.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, next I'm going to make a motion together to accept, to approve Orders 516 as amended in committee, 517 as amended in committee, and 518 as amended in committee, and I'll explain those amendments in a moment.
Second.
So these are 3 gifts. They're all related to the Central Waterfront Park, Market Landing Park, which is why we did them together in committee and why I'm asking you to consider them here. So it's a $200,000 gift in the first amount, and that is from the Mary Alice Arkelian Foundation. And then that's 516, and then 517 is another grant in the amount of $50,000. And then the third amount is $40,000, and that's from the Newburyport Bank, and the prior one was the Institution for Savings. So we did have a conversation in committee about what this would be utilized for, and we also just kind of had some other conversations as well. So the first thing was, thank you for the gifts, is could we use them towards the core of the park, for example, rather than jumping to the amenities? I think the answer was sort of the donor's expectation was that this would go towards those amenities. And as we all know, those amenities were challenging during the budget phase of the process, and we essentially had to do everything we could in order to fund the core portions of the park. So those funds are obligated, the ones that were bonded, the CPA funds, et cetera, that are going towards the Market Landing Park itself, so that's what that is. And these are for gifts. The same thing goes for the culvert, which we did ask about, okay, if we could free up funds somehow by shifting money around when we have an opportunity. Same thing there as well. So now to get into some details about the specifics here, probably the hardest thing for the committee was that there was a list of proposed amenities, and one of them was Adirondack chairs at sort of a whopping $2,000 each. We ended up taking some time to discuss that. I don't know that I have an answer for you, other than the planning director stating, this is what they're getting for contract bids from the contractor, and while we're getting the same rates that we would have gotten had these been included in the original contract, that's good. It sort of was just a hard pill to swallow, frankly, that an Adirondack one chair could cost $2,000. So I'll leave it at that. There was some unhappiness on the committee about it, but it is gift funds, and I guess the prevailing theory was if the gifters are okay with that, then it is what it is kind of thing. Then we talked about plaques and whether there would be any plaques to thank these, and there will be. So I do want to make very clear note of that we never resolved the broader sponsorship questions that we had started to sort of look at in the ad hoc, which I just happened to sit on, but that there is an expectation that there will be a plaque, there is a location that's selected for it, and it's meant to be relatively low-key, nothing crazy, but a thank you to each of these 3 organizations for their contributions to the park. Then we had to talk about, okay, where will these amenities go? And the planning director referred back to the plans, which I think at this point are hopefully fairly well known, but they are the plans that made their way through the ad hoc and ultimately through the council with debate and public process along the way. So that's where the amendment comes in. It's not a lengthy amendment. It just basically funds will be spent consistent with the approved plan. That's what it is. And that was discussed in committee and approved there, and it comes to you amended, the 3 of them together, the 3 of them with the same condition. So it was 3-0, it's $290,000. The last thing I need to mention is that a schedule of the amenities were shown on the screen. That's where that Adirondack, but more bigger than that as well was that the total amenities are actually greater than $290,000. There's a gap between the 290 and the total cost of the proposed amenities. So the natural question is, where would we get? And it turned out to be $47,000 is the difference. So it's 290 plus 47. The answer is there's some orphaned money, I guess, from a rail trail thing that was unspent that the administration is going to use towards this purpose, and that in their opinion, the finance director opinion, does not need another appropriation because it's consistent with its original appropriation and purpose. I would say there were some eyebrows raised a little bit in committee, but it's not really before us per se. But I just wanted you to know that the 290 isn't the whole thing. There's another 50 grand or so going into it. So 3-0 in committee.
Further discussion. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, this just has a whole bunch of questions to it, I guess. You know, I was unable to make the meeting, so I couldn't share my comments, but I did ask the question that the amenities be clearly spelled out with a dollar amount going forward. I think, you know, piggybacking off a conversation we had an hour ago about how there's certain prices that are outrageous, $2,000 or $4,000, whatever the case may be, for different amenities, whether they come through a contractor or whatnot, are unacceptable to us. I think that through the generosity of the bank, we should at least have the respect to not overpay and throw money away that is diligently given to us. In terms of, so I'd ask even further that there'd be some value engineering that goes on within that, and I'll even make an amendment if need be, that we go through the bidding process, the municipal bidding process, to make sure that we drive down the cost of these amenities going forward, to make sure that we get the absolute lowest dollar amount for that. In terms of the $47,000, you know, again, that seems to go against every principle that we've been talking about, which is to not spend tax or public money as much as we can in parks like this. We talked about it. We said it was going to be CPA funds. We violated it the first time we did it when we did the culvert by moving free cash in there instead of reallocating CPA money going forward. It was let's call it a gentleman's agreement that we all had going around the room, that we were going to not burden the taxpayers on this. $47,000 could go to something else. There's a lot of projects coming up going forward. I can think of tennis courts being one of them, or something like that, that could easily reuse those funds going forward. So in its current state, I don't think I can support this, and I think that's a shame, because I think the generosity of the community is well spoken here, and so I'll yield for the time being, but I will offer an amendment going forward.
I see Director Port's here and has his hand up. And Andy, I've allowed you to speak.
Thank you, Council President. Just briefly, I won't speak to every point. I understand Council's different positions. I do appreciate the Council's approval, hopefully, tonight, so we can get the amenities. To the question about the Adirondacks, I did immediately reach out to Sasaki, who would inspect the specific equipment, and then we had some exchange initially about durability and the difference between what's out there, a residential style chairs versus something more expensive. I pressed back about the order of magnitude percentage. And so we are discussing that with them before we move ahead with that component of it. We were most anxious here with the acceptance relative to the larger swing trellis features, which have a very long lead time. So we have a little more time to work on the Adirondack end of things. So definitely appreciate the concern, but as the council had previously suggested, we have raised or obtained local funds for the site amenities as opposed to using some other city account. So hopefully the council will be able to accept that tonight so we can move ahead, and we will certainly use the VE or value engineering approach, the Sasaki, as we push forward the rest of the amenities. Some of the swing trellis features can't be altered, but the Adirondack chairs obviously we're discussing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Port. Councilor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I think just a point of clarification, because I know there'll be additional gift acceptances, because even though I was not on the Market Landing ad hoc, I do remember some of the comments were that there would be some gifts for some added amenities. So I think I'm just a little confused. So if the counselor from Ward 5 can explain, or maybe I'm not understanding, it's two separate issues, but I wasn't sure about the gentleman's agreement. Or can you get clarity? Because it looks like if we're going to have amendments, I want to make sure I understand that.
Sure. Glad to. So during the ad hoc, when we decided to move forward in our recommendation to the full council on this, we had stated we wanted to stay within CPA funds and not burden the taxpayers with this at all. So the city's contribution would be the CPA funds, and then we would go outside to private entities to help fund amenities and things like that to be able to bring in, with a stated comment that said, we cannot afford this park, to build this park on our own and maintain it going forward. So we need outside help going forward. That spurned a discussion about, that spawned a discussion about naming rights and things like that, while we let it receive and file and we let it move on a little bit, is really clearly here in this documentation, because we're taking money from an entity, very generous as well, and we're giving them naming rights of amenities that go forward. That is not something that we have approved or even recommended going forward from the ad hoc committee. We did not make a recommendation. We did not finish our report going forward. And so what we have here is a situation in where we have the money and we need to take it, but in a way we've violated all of the agreements that we've had in place. And so, yes, you were not part of the ad hoc going forward, but these were the agreements that we had coming out of this, that the citizens weren't going to fund everything 100%. We were going to look for private entities. We found these private entities. We wanted to make sure that they were recognized going forward. But, again, part of this is that we want to make sure that we spend their money like it's our money, and we make sure that we get the most bang for the buck to say thank you in recognition of the generous donation they made. Thank you.
Councilor Khan?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think what it just shows is, I do know the whole naming, when we went through with the parks too, and naming rights, so I think there's a lot here that I hope we could tackle maybe in our next session and come up with some more clarity, because it does seem like it's a good points raised, and let's maybe get it more transparent and maybe fix some of this, or get this agreement aspect somehow understood that all the councilors can understand when these things come before us. So thank you.
Director, I'm sorry.
Yeah, unless there's any other comments, I'm
Right.
going to make an amendment to the amendment that's there, just adding a sentence that all amenities go through a municipal purchasing process starting now.
Director Port, isn't that how we were going to do it?
Yes, that's correct, Council President.
Okay.
Well, I'm a bit confused, because just a few moments ago, he said he was going to work this through Suzaki and let Suzaki do the quotes for us to be able to provide this. So I'm a little confused, right? There's the company over in Salisbury that builds you anything you want for $100, and yet we're sourcing things through somebody who doesn't live in this area, right? And so I'd like the amendment to go through, if I could have a second, to be able to continue talking about it, to ask that all amenities that are procured through this, whether they're Suzuki's involved or not, follow our municipal procurement process.
Council President?
Certainly, Director Port.
It should be noted, and maybe the Ward 5 councilors are familiar with the procurement processes we use. I was not saying earlier actually that society would be choosing the amenities. They specified amenities previously, and what I'm doing is revisiting what the contractor would be providing to us, getting the numbers from them, and the vendors backing up with information on their end is where we get that and how we procure that here under a construction project in this time frame here. So it does follow the procurement laws, the procedures involved there. What I'm doing here to the council's concerns is pressing back Sasaki, who had specified a higher-end commercial grade piece of equipment, and pressing back on the order of magnitude difference to see whether or not we can get something that is value engineered between those two numbers, more commercial grade, but it's that are offering these funds for the amenities on the waterfront, but that's for any so-called naming rights. There was discussion, just a brief, discussion with bronze plaque, as it would be typical, but no one has asked for any naming rights, so to speak, of anything down there.
Thank you, Director Port. So what is the amendment? What is the amendment, so we all
The way
know?
I have it is the motion amendment has a first and second, it's on the floor for a vote. It would state all amenities go through a municipal purchasing process, starting now.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Passes.
The amendment.
The amendment.
Passes, and
All right.
on the floor is approved as amended,
All
Just
16.
a point of information, so that amendment was added to all three?
Yes.
They're all together, yeah.
Collective,
So-
collective.
16, 17, and 18.
Correct.
All those in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve Order 519, holiday parking 23.
Second.
Fairly pro forma, I think, something we do every year, but we've gotten really good at actually doing it on the floor, which I think is good. So this is to provide no-cost parking, and let's use it as a way to invite folks to come downtown and shop local, as they say. You see the dates in the order, and they were done in consultation with the clerk, and it's 3-0 in committee.
Discussion. All those in favor of free holiday parking, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Present.
Now,
You just mark me across the board as present.
so let's do a three-way motion to receive and file. That would be Order 336, which is the ARPA Amesbury 250K. The Order 505, the Order 504, Local Acceptance Community Impact Fee, and Transfer 153, which is a large number, but it's really just the Atkinson part, the receive and file on those three.
Second.
So I'll just give you a brief rundown on all three of these. The ARPA Amesbury, that's the interconnect for water that has been in budget for quite some time. It was really stalled out primarily as the city was attempting to negotiate an intermunicipal agreement with the city of Amesbury, but that never really came to us, so we didn't act on it. And we had some conversations with the administration about, do we want to continue this to the next session or receive and file it? And it was the administration's preference and recommendation that we receive and file it so it can be started fresh and anew next year. Of course, we all are familiar with ARPA, so that is ARPA funds, and those do need to be encumbered, not necessarily spent, but encumbered to the best of my knowledge by 12/31/24. So it is something that likely would take up. One question that did come up in committee was, are we still going to do these, or are these still things that are actively being worked on and considered? And the answer was yes, and actually it kind of bleeds into the next one, which is Transfer 153. Again, it's just the Atkinson part. That's a big number, but we did most of it in its context and its time. But the ARPA funds were also called for here, and this is the Atkinson. Atkinson's got all different pieces, but this is specifically the piece around the parking. So similar conversation here. Do we want to carry it to the next session? Answer was, I think we'd rather start, from the administration, I think we'd rather start fresh in the new year with updated information, updating costs, which could be shifting as time has gone on and as the conversation evolves. So as a recommendation for receive and file. And then lastly was Order 504, and as I explained, that mushroomed into the three orders that we concluded, so this one is now no longer needed. So that's the receive and file on these three.
Further discussion? All those in favor of receiving and filing those three orders and the transfer, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, the very last one is going to be a motion to approve Order 505, gift acceptance Knock tennis courts.
Second.
This is $21,000 gift. It is a gift. It is designed, the funds would go toward designing additional courts at the Knock. So you probably remember we did recently do some work on the tennis courts. But the idea here would be to go ahead and add more courts. And so the number of courts, additional courts desired are 3. This funding specifically would go towards the design of the project. The design exceeds 21.1, so the actual design is about 38.7, so this is towards that effort. My understanding, in speaking with the special projects manager, is that a CPC grant will be filed, which, as you heard the mayor say, are due end of this week. And so those funds would be added to these funds to do the full design and ultimately, eventually, the construction documents and bid set and all of those things. This obviously, because it doesn't even cover design, it obviously does not cover construction either. And the current estimate, early estimates I'll call them, around the three courts is about $500,000, $550K to add them. This includes grading work, and I guess there's some retaining wall that would need to be done in order to create a level space, which I guess is really important for tennis. So that number will come better into focus. So this actually stayed in committee for one cycle because we wanted to get that clarity, and the amendment that was added was that this gift is contingent upon the CPA funding approval. So we were uncomfortable in committee necessarily taking the money. At first we thought it would cover the whole design, so we were concerned that we'd spend the money on design and then the project wouldn't necessarily come to fruition and then maybe give us our money back or something like that. We didn't want that. So I want to state clearly here for the record that that is the amendment being offered, so we would anticipate a CPA grant first being made, but the contingency is actually for it to be accepted. And so they would not, our understanding is that there would be no entry into a contract for design until the CPA monies were awarded, so that we don't end up in a middle of the road situation where we've taken money and we cannot sort of finish the deal, so to say. So we won't know the CPA outcome until probably spring of next year based on the application, and the CPC has to recommend it to us, and then, as you know, we have to approve it. So with that amendment, it was 3-0 in committee.
Thank you, Councilor Zede. Further discussion. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I hate to be the skunk at the picnic here, but I'll play my role. So I think it's great that the Friends group, the Informal Friends group, has made a donation. First of all, I think that this is a school project. We determined that at the last time when we renovated it, so it's not DPS in schools, and schools probably should be accepting this funds, not necessarily DPS and schools going forward. Secondly, this is a directed donation here, where they clearly name a vendor to do the design for, and yet they don't pay for it directly. So in a way, they're directing us to hire somebody that may or may not fit into what municipal procurement would determine at $38,000 going forward along the way. So the question really is, do we want to amend this and strike all of that language that directs this to, the certain vendor here in order to accept it? Do we want to add another contingency in here that, contingency to design standard, to the design vendor, subject to municipal procurement process that we're going through along the way? And then nobody's answered the question about really whether this is truly a school project, which the last two that we did, we voted to make it a school project. So I'm not sure if the committee can maybe answer that. Thank you.
Councilor Z.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I mean, it does say in the letter that, the gift, these funds have been collected for the express purpose of contracting, Huntress and Associates to start the design process. But as I mentioned, unfortunately, it doesn't cover the full design process. So to me, it's fair, but I mean, I don't know if you have any better information than I do. I think if that's, I'd be happy to make that motion myself, that we just, it's still accepted for the same purpose, but that we notice the gift givers that the selection of a design firm has to be done consistent, and especially now that public funds will be added to this, has to be done consistent with municipal procurement law, et cetera. So I'm always a little fuzzy on the lines of where the numbers are, but it may have to go to bid, or it may be a three quote kind of thing, or it may be a best efforts thing, but whatever that is, we need to follow that. So I'll make that a motion to make it easy.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Second motion.
All right. So
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Was that a friendly?
Yes, yeah.
And so Could you give me the language? It's more than just contingent on CPA approval.
Contingent upon CPA approval and with the understanding that the gift funds will be used consistent with municipal procurement law, including the selection of a design firm. And that can be communicated back to the gift givers.
Thank you.
Councilor Preston?
Thank you. I think the counselor from Ward 5 has a great point about this really being a school project as opposed to a DPS project. But the gift acceptance form has city department as DPS and school department. Can somebody speak to that? Help me understand why? Because they're obviously two different places. Why are we potentially going to?
I'm actually not sure because the school department is applying through CPA, not DPS, so it could just have been, yeah.
So can we amend this to get rid of DPS in the city department as well?
Super friendly.
Well, then, we've made these amendments, but, the reality is that it's not ours, right? So we're sending an approval back to somebody who's actually applying for it, right? So I don't know if that's a circular kind of approval process going forward anyway, but, I'm okay with all the amendments, voting to accept the money as long as it goes to the right place. And they don't, this, the group, as well-intentioned as they are, don't dictate to us who we need to pick for our vendors going forward. Thank you.
Understood. All right. Further discussion? All right, voting on the amendment or voting on everything?
I think it's been friendly amendments approved
Okay.
as multiple amendments.
All right, so all those in favor of Order 505 as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
That is it for business. So barring any unforeseen circumstances, Budget and Finance is closed for the session, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, Councilor Khan and Councilor Wright. Budget processes a lot of information and a lot of meetings, and I'm grateful to both of them because, we always had quorum, we had our meetings, we were efficient, we got a lot done, and that goes to the credit of the committee members. So I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Community Services, Councilor.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to make a motion collectively to approve appointments 438, 439, 440, and 441.
Second.
Thank you. These four appointees are to go to the Emma Andrews Library. The Community Services Committee had a field trip. We actually went to the Emma Andrews Library. We sat in the front room where no kids are allowed, and we shared some cookies, and we had a nice conversation. The first appointee nominee, Susan Chase, was a longtime user. As a child, she reminded us she wasn't allowed in the front room. She thinks consistently that this is a lovely part of Old Newburyport and actually is one of the essences of the neighborhood that people talk about. You'll hear that a lot. She's got, it has an impact into the community as a local presence. Elders use it, kids use it, some specific groups like the knitting group, et cetera, use it, but there's still more work to be done. She talked about the acrimonious split years ago with the main branch of the public library, and she'd like to make sure there's some consistency that go forward in terms of bulletin board policies as well as things like that there can be some commonality there. There were some questions about how they get funding through their group, et cetera, that clearly Susan was able to answer that. We moved on to Annie Greeny Elrott. She's not from here. She was from Ireland. She moved here. She fell in love with the library and bought a house not too far away. She loves local services. She's committed to a literacy program. She loves to see the collaboration of old and new as they sit around the room and they converse. She too wants to further the mission of literacy going forward. Our third is Elizabeth Valeriani. She was here as a toddler once again. She loves books. She learned her love of reading in that front room and in story hour. She did acknowledge there was always a rivalry with the main library, but she thinks they won because they had such neighborhood camaraderie and support going on. She supports the mission of bringing kids into literacy, and she would love more collaboration with the Maine Public Library to see if they can do some joint things going forward. She would like to also see some improvement of the circulation of the room, maybe some IT improvements that they're kind of an island way down there. I think that we can expand our web and cloud down there at very little cost. And lastly was Virginia Champy. She was the branch librarian down there. She worked for former head Dottie LaFrance. She was the only employee. She did it all for a number of years. She started the children's story hours. It was always a big draw going forward. She had great efforts to keep titles current, to keep the adults coming back. Sometimes they would have newer books than the main library, and you could read them because the line and list was shorter. She acted as the treasurer of the association and was instrumental in moving this into a 501c organization, which now has a little bit more structure to it going forward. They still have their challenges, but I think our time down there was well spent with these 4 individuals. I readily support them. We voted 2-0 to support all 4 of them. Thank you.
Councilor Zaid?
Yeah, I just wanted to express my gratitude very quickly to these individuals. It's a nice amenity in my ward, and it so happens that all 4 of these appointments are my ward constituents as well, and they're just some of the nicest people in the city. So thank you to them for their service, and look forward to voting yes.
They are indeed. All right, further discussion. Do we need to do a roll call on this?
We do.
Yes, all right.
Roll call appointments 438, 439, 440, and 441. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Council President, I'd like to move forward appointment 437 and 443 for approval.
Second.
These are appointments to the Council of Aging Board. The first one that's there is Mary Louise Gagnon. She's been a citizen here since 1969, has always been active. She was a teacher at one time for a short period of time. She does a lot of volunteering, loves to volunteer going forward. Done some work with our Neighbors Table, and she'd like to help the seniors in our community age in place better, and she has a lot of experience she'd like to bring forward. The second one is Jeanette Isabella, not unknown to us here in council chambers. She's been a board member of many friends groups in the surrounding area. She's seen some pluses and minuses in her travels and would like to bring a lot of the pluses back to the Council of Aging Board here. She thinks she can be a good liaison between the new FONCOA and the Council Board itself. We voted 2-0 to approve this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further discussion? Roll call.
Roll call appointments 437 and 443. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Council President, I'd like to move forward Order 514, gift acceptance from the City Improvement
Second.
Society for the Bartlett Mall.
Second.
Thank you. This is a gift acceptance for $25,250. This is to finish the Bartlett Mall up top. The council had approved $303,000 as part of a matching grant going forward. They had, like everything, they had cost overruns of roughly $50,000, $50,500 roughly. They got a grant for from this group, which was long dormant, which is now arisen, that has this money that would like to donate to finishing off the Bartlett Mall. The workers are there. They believe that they can mobilize them quickly to finish this while the weather is still good. And there is an expectation that we will get the matching $25,000 from the state as part of the matching grant. We approved this 3-0 in committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Present.
I'd like to move Order 515 and 474. I'd like to invoke Council Rule 7H and move them to the next council session.
Second.
I just want to give 2 cents to each one as to moving them forward. There was a gift acceptance for the Morel Foundation for granite seating. We thought that that was a little too restrictive because it also included reutilizing funds that were dedicated elsewhere along the way. So it wasn't 110, it was 110 plus 34 plus another 2 going forward coming in. There was a general thought in the committee that it was too restrictive. We didn't have a plan that was finally approved. The granite seating was actually an option in the plan, and we would have liked to see them come in together so that whether it be granite edging versus granite seating might be a better utilization of that. We were running out of time to accept that. We asked the Morels to adjust that. They said they'll do it in January, so hence we want to say yes, but we want to get the language right so that we can actually utilize that money, which is why we did that. And the plan to approve the Bartlett Mall itself has actually, in a way, been withdrawn from the committee because they're back doing some quoting from different vendors and things like that, and that won't happen until February, but instead of starting over per se, we'd like to move that forward so that there's momentum as soon as they get those numbers coming in. So that's why we'd like to move both of those forward. Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor of moving 515 and 474 forward to the next session, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And the last one we have is Order 510, which is a Public Arts Committee policy. It says rules and regulations, but it's a policy, the how-to about going to do that, and I defer to the sponsor on that to give us an overview. Thank you.
Councilor Preston.
Thank you. Firstly, let me just to remind everyone, we did establish the public arts policy under Ordinance 157 at our last meeting. We had the second reading on it. So this is the accompanying policy, as the Ward 5 councilors mentioned. Prior to, well, let me back step one place from there. So Special Projects Manager Turner, firstly, has carried really the load on this, and most of this work is really hers. But she assembled a group of us last fall, quite a while ago, let's put it that way, members of the community to work together to establish both the policy as well as the committee itself. But so prior to now, public art determinations have really occurred within the Parks Commission. And frankly, to date, most of these installations have been in parks, but certainly not all public art would always fall into parks. As well, the Parks Commission does not feel qualified to make these determinations, and in fact has asked for a policy to be put in place so that they could move this out of the Parks Commission. So this policy was developed based on public art policies in Boston, Raleigh, and Boulder, Colorado. So this is modeled after established processes. And as to how it would work specifically within Newburyport, we really modeled that after the CPC, so that there essentially would be a committee, which again is the committee that we formed through Ordinance 157. That committee would hear proposals for projects, determine of those proposals what is most appropriate for Newburyport, and then bring it to the council for full approval. The policy that you have in front of you does dictate use of a public procurement process, as well as a committee of experts and criteria by which to establish equity across all the projects. The membership, I'll remind you, as we developed in the Ordinance 157, is 2 cultural council members, 2 residents, 1 local artist, one Parks Commissioner. All of those are appointed for 3 years, as well as one city staff who would be appointed for 1 year on this. And I'll draw your attention specifically to Section 2A, which dictates 7 criteria, by which the PAC will determine acquisition priorities with emphasis on affordability. Quite frankly, the policy very much calls out the point that there is no funds for such public art installations, and there's no intentions to develop funds for these, i.e. we anticipate that art would be donated to the city. There also is no funds for maintenance of art, and so there would be preference for projects that would not have heavy maintenance burdens for them. There's also an emphasis on appropriateness for the community, making sure that this fits with Newburyport and what we do here, and making sure that as we accept art, that it would be appropriate for the city, as well as accessibility. So both where it would be placed, but how it would be placed so that it would be accessible to everyone in the community. And then lastly, there is, we did make an amendment from the original proposal so that there would be essentially 2 opportunities a year for members of the public to present proposals to the Public Arts Committee. Again, they would mull it amongst themselves as to which they feel is best for the city, and then the City Council would approve those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Preston. Discussion. All right.
There was a motion made?
Motion approved.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Council President, there's nothing else going forward. The other 474 is taken, and I'm letting the communication remain in committee.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor McCauley. All right, so in general government, motion to receive and file Order 239.
Second.
So we, at the request of the sponsor, we opted to let this one go away since it's been around for quite some time, and we never got to discuss it, and just decided it was time for it to say goodbye. So we voted 2 to 1 present to receive and file Order 239. Discussion? All those in favor of receiving Order 239, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we had 2 communications that we were unable to get to in committee to discuss, Communication 461 and 468. We did state that we would move them to the next council, so I would invoke Rule 7H to move these to the next session.
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Zede?
Thank you. Yeah, with due respect, I think these just make sense to receive and file. I think that they're 2 communications, one from a councilor, one from a resident. We've certainly seen many of these flow through. I think we all kind of know where the debate lies on this, and I'm confident that we will be having those debates. I'm just not sure how these specific 2 communications will necessarily serve that purpose, and in the interest of a blank slate in the new year, I would recommend or suggest a withdrawal of that motion and a consideration for receive and file of the same.
All right, there's further discussion.
I'm good. I was a second.
All right, I would say I would remove my motion and accept the receive and file motion.
Second.
All right, with that being said, all those in favor of receiving and filing 461 and 468, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that clears the slate for general government. So next is planning and development. Councilor Cameron.
Thank you. Motion to approve appointment 444, Jennifer Bluestein to CPC.
Second.
Thank you. We did approve this 3-0 in committee last week, I believe it was. So this is, we did not ask the committee member from the planning board to attend the meeting. She'd been approved a few months before. Is a very qualified person. She basically would be the CPC rep from the planning board. And we approved it 3-0.
Discussion. Roll call.
Roll call approving appointment 444. Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to collectively receive and file Communication 494, Planning Board report regarding STRU, and Communication 500, also another Planning Board report on STRU.
Second.
Thank you. In committee, 3-0, we did vote to receive and file these. These are our old favorite topic, and we can gladly put these to rest.
Hopefully there's no discussion on that one. All those in favor of receiving and filing 494 and 500, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you. Motion to, using Rule 7H, to bring ordinance 164 to the next session.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you. We did have, I think, a good discussion and quite a bit of information. This is still a work in progress. There's discussions going on between the planning director and the current owner about a deed restriction or some way to make sure that opening this up to R3 does not also then open up the possibility to a commercial use there. There's a few other things in play. The intent would be to start with this carried over into the next session, and at the, as early as possible, bring this to a vote for the full council for the 2 readings, and try to do that by the end of January. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cameron. Discussion? Oh, Councilor Z.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, I find myself in a position to oppose, and the reason is I've felt since this was proposed that it's conflating 2 things. One is the redevelopment of the mobile site, which is a long-standing goal. I think that all of us share, or at least the vast majority of us, even if we don't agree on the particulars, and then a more wholesale change to R3 in general, which is the allowance for multiple structures on one site, which to me is a pretty controversial topic. And my concern is twofold. One is that actually tying these 2 things together is likely going to stymie both. And I don't want to slow down a redevelopment of the mobile site, and I don't want to put, frankly, myself in the position of being blamed for holding up the mobile site redevelopment. I think that needs to be worked on its own, and I believe that there is a legal way to do so. The broader change to R3, I don't personally agree with. I have not been able to find myself, and I did send in comments to the committee to this effect. So that's one major concern, is just this connection between 2 things that I'm not convinced need to be connected. And the second one is just the timing. Just from now that I've been on for a while, I can tell you that January is new beginnings, and which is good and bad, but having people come in and starting, particularly when you have new counselors, and then trying to have a first and a second reading within the course of the first month where you're still organizing the council and such, I think puts people at a disadvantage. So if you really wanted to, I think you really kind of have to start with a new one. And I'm sympathetic that zoning is hard and you have to advertise it again, and there's the hearings and all that. But for those 2 reasons, even in weighing against the sort of procedural weight of having to do the re-advertising and so forth, I still find myself not convinced that it should be sent to the next session. I yield. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Khan?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I would say, having attended the Planning Development Committee meeting, there was a good conversation around, getting some of the questions out there. I think it really did start a good dialogue, and in terms of moving it ahead, I don't see a problem to move this to the next session because we have started some momentum. In terms of where it goes from there, I think that it's okay to still have this in place, mainly also because we have the planning boards, that joint meeting we had done, of which they also provided a memo or a communication, which actually was also very interesting to see, kind of taking the conversation that was happening publicly and then responding to it, which was really educational in terms of what the implications were related to spot zoning and a lot of key points that are still relevant to the whole conversation around this corner. So I don't see any harm in moving it ahead, and I do think that those counselors who are going to be joining us, who are new, have been, I've seen them at those meetings, and I think they have been following this, so I don't see a problem with us moving this ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Councilor McCauley?
Yeah, I really have a question for the committee. Was there any discussion about possibly breaking these 2 up into, the focus on the mobile station and the redevelopment, and then the secondary discussion of the R3 and the multiple buildings on a lot. I know they're somewhat related, well,
Yeah.
they could be tied to related, but could they bog us down, and was there any comment on it? That's all.
And
Councilor
Director
Cameron.
Port's out there as well. And yeah, so just to answer that by also just emphasizing what the ward councilor, the at-large councilor said about, we did get the planning board report, which is quite dense, and there's a lot of, I think, important information in there. That has been emailed to all of you. It's not officially on our docket yet. We're going to have that in the first meeting, and then refer that also to planning and development. In terms of splitting it out, we've not discussed that, and I think there's two pieces. There's the location, the mapping part, changing what, you know, those two parcels, and they're joined, and there's a whole explanation about why it's really considered one parcel. That I won't get into, but it was R3 up until 2017 when the High Street residential came into being. So this is, you know, that part is to get it back to R3. And then there is the piece that, as the ward councilor says, does involve multifamily structures on one parcel. So to separate them, you know, certainly this was largely driven by the fact that this is a possibility of a development that I think would be, you know, good for the city. The planning board also goes into a whole list of reasons why this is not spot zoning, so I think that's worth taking a look at. But yeah, we didn't talk about splitting it out because it really wouldn't accomplish the piece that's related to that particular area. And again, I think in committee we could discuss the ward councilor's concerns about the bigger implications. So I don't know if the planning director wants to add anything to that.
Director Port?
Thank you, Council President. I would just agree with the council's last point there in particular that both of these particular amendments or changes to the zoning are actually necessary to facilitate that plan at the locus. I do think it's a relatively good plan based on, you know, inputs I've heard from abutters. The scale and the scope of the project, and so while I am waiting right now closure, I hope of a loop for the restriction on the property that would address the question of commercial uses. We think we have that mobilized. My hope is to circle back to the council as we go into the new year. But that being said, we did actually analyze the multifamily definition and actually responded to a language change suggested by the planning board chair, so we felt that was addressing any concerns that might have been had about other areas of zoning. And we did analyze, looking at the zoning map, where pros and cons of use of that provision can happen. The office did not recommend this change only for the global site, but rather for the zoning in general, because we believe it might actually result in similarly better sightlines for projects rather than having much larger structures with every unit having to be in one singular large volume. So with that, I just concur with the chair that both changes are basically beneficial, so we get thought of it since the package for efficiency.
Thank you, Director Port. And that report will be in the packet for the 1st of January. Came in today, we just opted not to bring it in, so. Further discussion? All right. Motion to move ordinance 164 to the next section through 7H, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you, Councilor Cameron.
Thank you.
All right. Won't make you stand.
Please make me stand. All right, Public Works and Safety. I'm going to be talking for a while here. Would somebody mind just grabbing me a water?
Yeah.
That'd be great. So I don't die.
There's no glasses.
Okay, I'm going to take some of these a little bit out of order, so bear with me here, but want to get through as much as we can. A lot of roadway items in here. All right, so first, motion to receive and file communication, thank you, 462.
Second.
All right, this was a letter that came in from resident Kathleen O'Connor Ives regarding questions and concerns about the quality of the drinking water, and she cited some numbers from some studies she had found. We had a meeting back last spring with water staff and the Water and Sewer Commission members. It was just a really good information session and understanding where everybody's coming from. So we invited some of the same folks back to a meeting last week and kind of checked in and see how things were going. And they gave us a bit of an update. So the questions from Ms. Ives' letter were, what are the shorter term and long-term plan to improve the quality of our drinking water? And what is the city doing to clearly and successfully notify residents about drinking water quality so that they can purchase filters if they so choose? So we had Tom Cusick and Director Wayne Amaral and Roger Jones, who's the chair of the Water and Sewer Commission, and some other folks on the call. Some of it got kind of technical, so I won't go that far into it, but they say they are meeting all the current regulations for PFAS, water quality. They do all the required monitoring, and they wanted to emphasize the water is safe, and they're meeting everything that they need to. They are working on capital plan, as we know, for many things for water, but also for looking at some of the water quality issues. And I believe that was it was submitted for a grant to go to the state. So I think they're going to hear back on that in a while. It was for a bonding type of thing. They have taken the Bartlett Pond. Bartlett Pond is over by Spring Street across 95 there. They have taken that offline because at one point it did have slightly higher PFAS levels, but it hasn't been online for quite a while. And we had talked at a previous meeting, like where could that have possibly come from? And maybe it was from highway construction years ago. I mean, it's right near the highway and the bridge, or any sort of like fire event, that kind of thing. They have done pilot programs at that area. I won't even mention the technical piece because I'm not sure what it is, but it's something with some absorbance, et cetera, and I guess that was successful. So basically, they submitted probably last week, or they discussed their capital plan with the Water and Sewer Commission, and then they're going to tweak it and talk about priorities and where does PFAS and water quality fit in their priorities and costs before it comes into the council in time for capital planning. I think that's about all I've got. The committee voted 3-0 to receive and file.
Further discussion? Councilor Z.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to use this opportunity to kind of, I guess, kick off the conversation for next year's budget, particularly as it relates to capital here, because I think there's just always this looming feeling about very large projects related. I mean, the last touch point, material touch point we had financially was during the budget, if you recall, when we did our capital raft, as I've come to call it, the sort of free cash in the spring spending. We approved some monies and then they got some grants. If you recall, like the dam was in question. The carbon filter seems to come up in every one of these conversations about that's the way to address the taste and odor concerns, which are maybe slightly different, but also related to the PFAS. And you know, we're talking about Whittier and some big numbers, but these are also very big numbers. And so I think it'd be good to get that on the table again in the spring, and so that we have a sense for where they're headed and maybe what they're thinking rates will be looking like and all of those kinds of pieces. So it just seems like a good chance, and that's sometimes the benefit of these communications, is to create an opportunity for conversation. So I wanted to throw mine out there.
Thank you, Councilor Z. Councilor Wallace.
Just to follow up really quickly, I mean, we just had a couple of really good discussions with both the staff and the Water and Sewer Commission, and they're willing anytime to come in and meet with the council, so maybe they could, you know, talk with Budget and Finance at some point. So, you know, I think having this new committee makes it a bit easier to align with what we're working on, and so I agree, but I think, you know, and also with the new director, there's more communication going on just all around and trying to get this water. I mean, it just seems like such a big thing, and trying to get a grasp on it and break it down into priorities over, you know, several years. So hopefully we'll see some of that coming in the spring.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Councilor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President, and thank you for all of this conversation, because when the tie and bond report was done, there were the recommendations, and everyone's completely right. The conversation with Whittier, deferred maintenance, things that we know are coming, and then to be finding out about it is it might be where we're going. So what I would encourage is maybe coming next term, that tie and bond report should be made. It was done in September 2021. I've always asked about that recommendation section and tying numbers to that, and I think that's what the CIP was trying to do, but getting updates on this would be really critical. So I would actually ask that we get that too in front of with the new counselors and to remind those of us who are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of receiving and filing communication 462, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
All right. Motion to receive and file communication 412. This was a letter from May 2022 from Ann Jurancic.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Save me there. This is one of the many letters we had received, communications regarding roads and safety, and we had held these in committee until we kind of got the latest streets and sidewalks plan. And since the council session is ending, we decided to bring these all out. This one was Ward 6. This was in, I'm sure Councilor from Ward 6 knows a lot about it, but this was in response to an accident where a woman was hit. She was not killed, but she was severely injured at Noble and Story Ave. And I'm glad to see Noble Ave is on the list for next year, I believe. But just driving by there again.
It's been on the list for years.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that part. The sign is down again. I mean, it got knocked again. So it's just another example of, the safety concerns. And we want to give answers to these residents, but we can't always do that. But I hope it's something that council can continue to work on and be aware of. It was motion to receive and file 3-0 in committee.
Thank you. Discussion? All right. All those in favor of receiving and filing, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right. Again, a little bit out of order here. Motion to invoke, you gave me the number.
7H.
7H, and move order 449 to the next session.
Second.
All right, this is an order for traffic mitigation or calming along High Street from Cutting Drive to Myrtle Avenue. This was a grant that was awarded to the city. This was before Director Emerald's time. And since he came on board and different options were looked at, they decided they may want to have a slightly different design. And originally the grant was to end, it was supposed to be done by December of this year, but they got an extension so that it could be done by June of 2024. So this project is still in the queue. It's not going to look like what they have in here necessarily, but we wanted to keep the order and the intent in the committee and carry that over so they can continue discussions with residents. So that was approved in committee 3-0.
To go to next year?
Yes, to send it to next year.
All right. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of invoking 7H on 449, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next up.
Okay. Motion to receive and file communication 459.
Second.
All right, this one was from residents on Arlington Street who did a petition before petitions were even official here. They were very interested in looking at traffic calming options, and this was initially when Arlington was on the list for probably a while, at least a couple years ago, but they're still on the list, which is a little further out. But they came to our committee meetings and, talked with different staff, and it was decided that there may be some options for traffic calming when they do touch the street, and it's just kind of, when we go to improve a street, we should always consider if traffic calming is available or not. So this is a good example of kind of the neighbors getting on board, and they were kind of watching what was happening on Plummer Ave. So just a good reminder to DPS to make sure to add that in. So this was 3-0 in committee to receive and file.
All right. Discussion? All right. All in favor of 459 being received and filed, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, motion to receive and file communication 505.
Second.
This is the communication from Kristen Hunter, who, well, she's still here, and she spoke before the meeting here. And this is to advocate for improvements to Merrimack Street. I think it's, you know, I very much understand the problem, and especially being, you know, living in that area, but also being the Ward 4 counselor. You hear about Merrimack Street all the time, and I know I bring it up here, but I really hope that the council can continue to look at this area. I mean, it's very, it's scary for kids waiting for buses, kids wanting to cross, the volume of traffic, the speed of traffic. And people will say, oh, well, you know, it's supposed to be that fast, or they need to get into the city. But the problem is, there's not enough safe crossings, there's not enough crossings, there's not enough visible crossings, there's not enough sidewalks. And these are very simple, basic tools that can be done. But for some reason, Merrimack Street just seems like this huge problem that nobody can tackle. Now, it just, you know, to plug some of the work that some of us had done, 2.5 years ago for the safety zone, the idea was to look at that, and this council voted 11-0 to do the safety zone. And it's not just about putting up signs, you know, and say, hey, it's 20 miles an hour. We know that's not going to work, but the whole intent was to make improvements there, and then ideally the approach or the endpoints of that safety zone could also be addressed for better crossings and safety, et cetera. And unfortunately, we're not seeing any movement on the safety zone other than, oh, we're going to put up some signs. So again, I asked the council and residents just to keep pushing and understanding how important it is. I know, I don't know exactly, maybe a year or so ago, there was a dog killed near a school bus, and the kids saw it. I have seen many cars go by buses, et cetera, et cetera. It just, it needs work, and there's some simple things, and I think we just need to make it a priority. It is, the street improvements are not included as part of the Lower Atkinson plan, which to me doesn't make sense. I would have done the street improvements first, and the Lower Atkinson plan has ARPA money going to it, which also doesn't make sense to me because I feel like it should go to streets and sidewalks, but that's a later discussion. So I agree with Kristen in here, and I give her a lot of credit for being, you know, very active and vocal and advocating for that area, because it needs some work. So with that, I will yield, and it was receive and file 3-0.
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, just a comment to this. Even though we're receiving and filing this, the concerns are very real. And I would encourage the resident to refile her letter in the next legislative session so that it stays top of mind with us going forward. At the committee, we did hear some conversation from public comment that alluded to, you know, some of these streets were cut-throughs, and they were collector streets and things like that. And they said, what changed? Well, what changed was the housing affordability issue with Newburyport. Before, Merrimack Street was sparsely populated, as was Low Street, as was Hale Street, all of those things. And because of this, every available lot is full. And so we have developments that are full, and they're full of kids, and they're full of roving dogs, and they're full of moving adults, and they're full of things like that that have to get outside along the way. And our residents now are encroaching upon shortcuts that used to happen. And that's where all of these things are coming to a head. COVID exposed it and blew it up, and it hasn't recovered since. So it's really a word of encouragement that we need to fix that section of Merrimack Street as a priority, as the other streets that we identify going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Councilor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I mean, it's one of those things, as all these communications have been going on, that there were residents who raised concerns, and I appreciate the work that the Public Works and Safety Committee has been doing in this area. One of the things that is also, actually when I saw the rule that I wrote that were received and filed, I was reading part of the section above it about ad hocs being formed. And I know there's another segment of Merrimack that comes up, and I think the counselor, former or soon to be at large, but Ward 3 counselor knows there's another intersection where we've heard a lot of danger. So I would encourage that ad hocs are a great way to, because we have the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, but there's also a way to use the ad hocs in a way that maybe if we dedicate to Merrimack Street, because we've been hearing it a lot, and I really do take to heart the Ward 4 counselor who will be leaving us, who I will really miss, who's brought some really good points on this topic and really elevated it here, to continue that work and to make sure we can finish the work she started. And I think that might be a way to really give it some more teeth and maybe some report back in a way that we can do some more action. So that's something I would recommend maybe for next term, to use ad hocs in another way that gets things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Councilor Z.
Thank you. I was actually going to say some of this about Ordinance 103, so I'll try and save some for that, or maybe try and say more here. But with due respect to my colleagues, my concern is that this process is fundamentally, it doesn't work. I mean, there actually may not even really be a process. I mean, we have, what has happened over my time, this is just my experience, is that TSAC was formed as a place for complaints to go. And that's what it was. And it was never codified anywhere. It was a mayor's ad hoc. It was some sort of effort, I'll give it that, in the sense that it created a place for at least some voices to be heard to some degree. And, you know, now we have, we've sort of redone our committees, and now we have a better, I think, title in Public Works and Safety, which is, you know, another step in the right direction. But residents, they don't care about any of this. It's all insider baseball. And so what you're witnessing is frustration, because what these residents get told is, I don't know, write a letter. And so from their perspective, and I can see it when I tell my residents this, and I just got into an email conversation with some residents about the other end of Merrimack Street, and it's the same conversation. It's just extreme frustration. Why do I have to keep writing a letter? I already wrote a letter. I already went to the meetings. I already said. And so my point in saying all of this is that, you know, just pushing the residents around and pushing paper around really isn't what they're looking for. And so the real connection for all of this, as with most things, Muni, is money. Life goes back to money. You know, allocating funding for a specific project is really what the heart of this is. So the best any counselor ward counselor can do is, hey, I'm trying, right? I'm pushing for you. I'm pushing for more road work. And we have got to confront at some point that we have a deep disagreement on the role of the council, on this topic. I think there's a prevailing theory that the council is more of a problem than a solution, that we would just gum up the process in terms of picking roads and all of those things, and I've heard it's too political and all these different arguments. On the other hand, I'm not sure how to explain that to a resident, and I've tried, and I no longer do, because I realize that what I'm saying sounds dumb to them and they don't appreciate it, and I don't blame them. So this resident is not going to leave here tonight with a sense of satisfaction that we did anything for her or for her neighborhood. And Ordinance 103, the reason I bring it up is, you know, that's the continuation of Ordinance 84, and it was designed to create some process. And we didn't have the votes, and we don't have the votes for 103 tonight to create some process. And by the way, the process isn't easy. It means the council has to take some responsibility instead of the old council, hey, I don't decide which roads get done, I'll do my best for you, which is also tough to deliver to a resident. So I'm just pointing out that this is all broken to me. There has to be consistent funding. We've tried to make some efforts towards that, but even in the roadway bill bond, we could only get to a consistency with a plan, not even a plan that we really have any bite in. But yet, we keep taking committee time and telling residents, write a letter, file a petition, and they don't like it. So I mean, I'm just pushing that out there that I think, my opinion, at some point we have to confront that, and if 103 wasn't the answer and 84 wasn't the answer, then what is the answer? And in my opinion, it can't just be this again, write a letter and, you know, we'll commiserate with you and feel bad for you, but at the end of the day, sorry, we really don't have any power.
Thank you, Councilor Z. Further discussion? All right, Councilor Wallace, which communication were we at?
5.
All right. All those in favor of receiving and filing 505, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
All right, on to more Ward 4 items here. Motion to receive and file communication 479.
Second.
All right, so this was a memo I had written about just this is my Ward 4 hat now, about the priorities that Ward 4 has. And I had done this a couple years ago. I'm sure the DPS directors aren't fond of it, but what it does for me, it helps me to explain to the residents, you know, I try to understand what they're saying, and it's also a written document, so the next counselor can take it and say, okay, because you don't want to restart. So some of this starts to get into the streets and sidewalks plan and how we make choices on what are priorities. So I won't get too into it right now, but of course I'm biased about Ward 4, but I do think it has some really interesting characteristics. It's really kind of a pass-through ward. It's got, you know, parks at the other end. I mean, Atkinson is a destination, of course, but everyone's just going down Merrimack Street to get downtown, or everyone's going, you know, down High Street to get downtown. Or they're cutting through Ward 4 to get to the hospital. It's kind of interesting. So, and with the major streets too, there's just a lot of activity, and I wish the next counselor well, but I hope that the administration can understand that there are some really unique things here. And also just the road situation. I know the South End and other areas have really bad roads, but it's those cut-through streets that are so unique between High and Merrimack. They're wide and they're in horrible condition, and like to see those somehow get paved, you know, and not 8 years from now. But and then the traffic safety issues, and these are just the priorities that have been around for a while. Merrimack Street, Mosley Avenue, to get that small piece of sidewalk in, Rawson Avenue, High Street, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, hopefully this can be a guide for anybody in the future, and hopefully DPS can take it and use it, and some of these can get addressed. So that's about all I have for that. And we approved it 3-0 to receive and file.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of receiving filing 479, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay. Motion to receive and file ordinance 103.
Second.
Okay, so this goes back to the past council session as ordinance 84. And this, we had voted on this right before the council session ended. And the counselor from Ward 1 had already kind of touched on it a bit. But the idea was to get some sort of process into it because, yeah, it was just, especially as ward counselors, I mean, it affects everybody, but just all these complaints coming in and no ability to explain how this is done, and trying to use some of the council's statutory authority, because the city council or in a town, the Board of Selectmen, are by state law the highway commissioners. They have the final call on what happens in the public way. You know, in some committee or some cities or towns, they may be more involved, some maybe not as much. But, you know, we just want to make sure that we agree on what should our streets look like, or make sure that they're safe, et cetera. So we brought this back in this term, but the votes weren't necessarily there. But we had some good discussions about process and maybe getting some complete streets elements in here, et cetera. But with the new administration coming in, we said, well, we'll just let it sit and see how see if it's of any use to them. So I will say, I mean, it's a culture change, right? So, and I would say there's progress. I don't know how many meetings I was in with counselors and, you know, former staff members that you need to do a plan before you touch the road. They say, oh, no, you don't. You got to do it's too much work. But now the new director comes in, he's like, we have to do a plan before we touch it. I'm like, thank you. So I think there's something there. So I think it's a culture change and people are understanding, process and checklists, putting things in writing. It can't hurt. So, This one's done for now, but I would hope that somebody could pick up that section of the streets and sidewalks. It needs some work. And working with a new director, I think a lot could be done, kind of an overhaul of that, to make it clear to everybody how this should work. So, 3-0, receive and file.
Counselor Zaid.
Thank you, and with apologies to speak on this, but I just wanted to rewind the tape a little bit even further, just so people remember that the original was Ordinance 84, which actually passed the council and was vetoed by then Mayor Donna Holiday. So, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of work that has gone into 103 to try and soften it to a point where, in theory, it was a compromise. And I think right now my concern and my problem is that the pendulum is too far in one direction. So it's a very fair argument to say that the council's process can be a detriment to certain things in the city because of the time it takes for us, et cetera. But those same things that are negative sometimes are positives when it comes to creating transparency, when it allows for the public to have their speech and to say things that they feel, and for us to hear them, and then also for us to shape and meld the actual outcomes that are happening. And so we got to that point with Ordinance 84. It passed 7-4, and then it was then vetoed, and then I actually myself spent a bunch of time with the then DPS, well, I guess acting DPS director at the time, trying to, and it kept coming back to this one word, flexibility, and that's a word that we often hear on the floor as far as, the council's hindering that or incapacitating the work from being completed in a timely fashion. And I just want to keep arguing my point because it's so important to me that everything has a pendulum, everything has a spectrum, and right now the pendulum is too far in one direction, in my opinion. It's too much of a black box. It's too impossible to tell. I mean, when a resident contacts me and says, I want a stop sign, or I want to have a handicap space, I can define a process for them. I've got to put an ordinance in, it's got to go to committee, it's going to need 2 readings. Here's what we need to present, here's how we can build the case for what you want. When somebody comes to me and says they want the road paved, I'm like, well, you're gonna need all the ingredients of Dr. Pepper, which nobody knows, and a dragon's foot, and some good luck, and the star and the moons have to align, and then maybe then you'll get what you want. So I just wanna put out to the council, please keep thinking about this, and thinking about how the council could participate while still maintaining a degree of flexibility. A very simple idea for me is, if you have $1 million to allocate to something, 700 of it is spoken for in a process that we define, and 300 is left unallocated to handle emergencies and so forth. There is a solution to this that's not 100% of the money has to be flexible until the last possible minute. And I really bristle in, say, budget or public works when somebody says, well, the water main's going to blow up in the street. I mean, come on, that's one thing, but how come we can't have any planning whatsoever? So I'm urging that, I'm putting that out there because I'm bummed actually to see all the work on 103 go in the trash can, but hopefully it can come back and be reconsidered maybe, and I've made a dent in your mind on it now for future consideration.
Thank you for the reminder. Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I'm actually optimistic, and I think this work and actually the learnings from it really did inform a lot. So I don't think any of this work has gone awry or forgotten. And I'll point to a good example. I mean, public art policy, which I really am grateful to Councilor, the other Councilor at large. There was a process of, and this is why I mentioned the ad hoc, there's a collaborative aspect that's involved here. And I think as one of the ones who opposed 84, there was a real reason for that. And that was working with, as I've always said before, those who we write the laws for, those who are the ones dealing with it day to day, are important to listen to. Which is why the ad hoc is one concept I'm going to say, but also ways that this could be done with a policy plan. And as we saw with the public arts, we had an ordinance and we had the plan. And so I'm on board to make those happen. And again, I really do acknowledge the Ward 4 councilor for starting this work and for starting this kind of as to me, we got a template to start from. And with that, we bring in the right people in this ad hoc, including the DPS and those who are actually the ones understanding timing and what's really needed. And together, I think we really could do some good work from this. So I think it's all been a great effort and a great learning experience, and I really do think we could take it to the next level next term. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Further discussion? Councilor
Yeah,
Wallace.
just briefly too, with the new director coming in, it was also good and validating to hear. I mean, I think the council and DPS are going to get on the same page at some point, or agree in some ways. But we had talked about a lot, like, how are we gonna have a public process? You know, like, how do we vet a plan? And Director Amaral came in, and, you know, we had this new Public Works Committee. He's like, why don't we just use this? We'll bring in the plans here, I'll show up to the meeting. He's been coming to the meetings, and we've been talking with him like, hey, we have, you know, our review board, whereas before, you know, there was this, like, well, we don't want the council reviewing this or that, but it was a built-in process. And so again, it's a culture change. Yeah, I think there's some good things that could happen, and with that, I will yield.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Further discussion? All right. Motion to receive and file ordinance 103. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
All right, so this, all of this brings us to the road plan. And for discussion purposes, I will make the motion to receive it and file communication 511.
Second.
All right, so a lot of history here too, but we're coming up on year 3 of the roadway plan, and that's an easy way to think of it. So Director Amaral came in May, which was year 2. And if you remember, the council approved the plan right before he started working. We said, okay, just give it to us by June 30th with the intent that it would kind of match up with the budget. So they took more time, which was fine, because we want things to be right, you know, and work with the new department and his staff. So they submitted the revised plan on October 30th. So that was 4 months after we had asked. So that's what we have in front of us. He and his staff went through and put in more accurate cost estimates. So included things like police details and, you know, anything besides just paving. So that's why some of the costs have gone up. Also, he included sidewalks. I mean, you can really look at sidewalk reconstruction and paving as almost 2 separate projects. And sidewalks, as we know, are expensive. I mean, it's all expensive, but those take up a lot of funds. So he had based this on the previous plan that was done with the former acting director. And so kind of specified what's going to happen over the next 5-6 years and which ward. Some things moved, some things got, like for example, Willow Ave, but that's because they found out they needed to fix the sewer. And of course, we want the sewer fixed before they pave. So that got bumped to next year. And there were some other smaller streets that got bumped to later times. So that's the summary here. I won't get too much more into it. The other thing that we had asked for was a list of safety projects, or they call them safety and sidewalk projects. So that was, the safety issue came from me because I kept saying, we're missing this chunk of street projects. You know, it's great that we're paving and reconstructing sidewalks, but, you know, per the discussions we just had, we're hearing all this information from residents, like we need some work here. In my opinion, safety should be like way up the priority list, but I can get into that in a bit. So they had the safety list and sidewalk projects included, and they're looking for $6 million over 5 years, which went to budget and finance, as we know. And we also learned from the director that they need money soon to get going for the next construction season. So in order to line up their contractors and such. And I said, how soon is soon? And I kind of got the January-ish would be a good time frame. I felt pretty rushed in this process, and I can get into my concerns in a bit, but because we did want to get it out for this last meeting, it was approved without a recommendation to come to the council, 2-1. I was the dissenting vote because I wanted to keep it in committee or be able to kind of go through the plan in a little bit more detail. And I will yield with that.
Discussion. Counselor Z?
I just wanted to say a few things. One is I wanted to speak publicly sort of in response to some emails that I received from residents. So this is again where I think the confusion is coming in. I don't know if you, all my colleagues, have received these emails, but move me up the list, add me to the list, and trying to write back these convoluted emails that actually, you know, doesn't really work that way. And again, residents who may be watching don't know what receive and file even means. But I just want to be clear that, you know, apologetically, we don't have that. And I wrote that back to several people, and some people got back to me and said, thanks for explaining. Others probably were not so happy with that answer. But, you know, so it's just hard, because the context of the debate is really, we're motioning and voting on, we read the plan. That's how I think of a receive and file, not that we are assenting to the plan or that we like the plan. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. In my ward, for example, my main takeaways from this plan is, number one is, I'm worried that our spending on this is still deficient, and that doesn't mean that I think we can afford to spend more. Clearly that's a challenge across all fronts these days, but just looking at the volume of work versus the volume of request leaves a big, large hole in the middle. The second thing that I want to get right to is just real frustration about the Phillips Drive thing. So I got roped into this conversation as chair of budget, but a big part of this conversation was trying to actually account for where the money was going. And I think Chapter 90 is feels impossible to follow. I think we all feel that way about some monies. They just, no matter how many times you hear about it every year, it still doesn't make any sense. And Chapter 90 is one of those because it seems to cross the divide between fiscal years, and it feels like often they're borrowing from next year's Chapter 90 money to pay now, or they're borrowing from last year's to make up a plan now. But to get specific on Phillips Drive, I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, there seems to be this undertone that it got cut out of the bond that we did. Somehow it got removed from the project, and there were insufficient funds to apply a final coat to the Phillips Drive, and that was done during the approval process of the award of the contract by the prior administration. And I'm just mind-boggled. I was explaining, I said, we spent 6 months on this council arguing about asphalt loaf, which is not a thing anybody's, versus granite curbing. So the idea that we would approve a project without a top coat is ludicrous. I mean, and I have the spreadsheets that I received. So now you see in this roadway plan that you see Phillips Drive is back in here, and obviously what kind of insanity is it to do a $4.2 million project and then not put a top coat of asphalt on? So I think I'm frustrated, I guess, as you can hear, and this was my outlet for it, so I wanted to speak my mind on it. But so those are my concerns primarily, is that the sufficiency of the plan is questionable. And because we're not having this conversation in the context of funding, it's hard to say, well, maybe we should spend more, but that would mean we have to spend less on this, and that's always something I'm hopeful to have those this or that conversations, because that's when it gets real. And the second thing is that Phillips Drive thing is just too much for me. I mean, I think the Budget and Finance, as chair, I've submitted some questions. I know Public Works, so you've got CC'd on that today, all of you, and the DPS now director is hoping to find it, but how did it get awarded? Did it get removed from the bid? Was it a value engineer thing? Was it we'll wait till the next year's Chapter 90 money comes in? I don't know all those answers, but I do know that as evidenced by this plan, clearly they need to find money to pave it. So there has to be some answer to why that's true. I yield. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
Just follow up, yeah. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Just real quickly, that was one of the reasons why I wasn't ready to send this out of committee yet. But again, we wanted to get it here because we still don't have answers for Phillips Drive. And there were some questions I also had. I forwarded both of those emails on just kind of I think it's worth a lot to do a look back on the previous year, not as like a gotcha kind of thing, but like, all right, what did we estimate? What can we do better? So that we can constantly improve the plan. I mean, I'm very pleased that we have this plan. I think Director Amaral, came in and did a nice job on this. My problem was I think there's pieces missing, these safety projects that I talked about, but the other piece missing is kind of tying the money and understanding. Like, I was surprised to hear, oh, you're out of money already. So, but I know that's part of Budget and Finance too. So I just felt like if we had more time, we would probably dig a little bit more, but we haven't gotten the answers on Phillips Drive, and we're waiting to get those. That's all. I'll yield with that.
Councilor McCauley?
Thank you, Council President. I just have a couple of comments on this. So I do appreciate, us trying to move this forward in the plan. I do appreciate the work done by the new DPS director and the new administration. They have pivoted off metrics, which were roads first, and now seem to be more sidewalk centric going forward and fixing those. That has a disadvantage to those of us in the outer wards. We don't necessarily have a lot of sidewalks, and so therefore we've been deprioritized a little bit. But that's not why I'm speaking, right? I'm speaking here because of the, I want to remind us that the discussions that we're having here tonight, they're mostly by ward councilors who are directly accountable to our constituents on this particular issue. And so what we see here are symptoms of a problem. We've been beaten to death to give flexibility to the operational aspect of things. And sure, that's great, we do that. But our role needs to be respected. And we need a certain level of accountability. If you're gonna do 5 streets, you're gonna do 5 streets. You get to pick them. But I need the guarantee that you have 5 streets. And we're seeing answers that come in that way. We're seeing answers that say, oh, by the way, the numbers we used 3 years ago, they're not right. The numbers we used last year, what we thought we spent, we didn't spend that. Because they're getting more answers. We've got a new business director as well as part of this, who's looking at real costs. There's improvements to be made, yes. They'll admit it as well. We don't do project-based accounting, which we probably should, which would give everyone the data that they would need to know how much we do a street, how much we do a sidewalk. We're piecing that together right now. They're changing procurement processes that are going on. But the discussion here, and it's inclusive of 103, is that we're asking for the process. We have a role here to respond. We had a debate when we had, when we asked for a bond, right? And we had a debate about whether it should be the approved plan or just consistent with the plan that goes forward. And I'm a strong believer that it needs to be approved. I'm a believer that the communications have to stop, and they have to be orders, and they have to give us flexibility to be able to make comments along the way. This comes in as a communication. So any follow-up is, well, it's a communication, we can't change it. Well, guess what? That's not how it's going to work, right? Because it can't work that way long-term. Because again, we heard 3 hours ago now that getting a plan at the 11th hour without any collaboration isn't fun. Guess what? We live it every day. We get a road plan at the 11th month and ask to pass it in 2 weeks, and I get everybody's trying to reset the rubric there. But the problem is that it's still the 11th month. It could be the 11th hour, and we're asked to give $6 million, which is a lot of money, right? And so what we find out is that year 1 is 1.8 million. Again, we can't get the right accounting to say these streets go into this 1.8 million. Why? Because everyone needs flexibility except us. And that's part of the problem here. So as we go into the next year and we talk about process that goes on here, we need to assert the fact that we need a certain level of respect and accountability for these things. And in turn, we give back the respect and flexibility that operations needs to be able to do that. And I'm hopeful going forward in '24 and the work that we've done towards the end of '23 that we can accomplish that going forward. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of receiving and filing Communication 511, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No. And with that, I think I'm done. Really done.
All right. Good of the order. Would you like to say anything, Counselor Wallace?
Oh, really? We're to that now?
We're to good of the order.
I won't speak long. I just wanted to thank everybody, the counselors, especially the residents. I mean, it's not about me, it's about them and making the communities better. And, you know, there's some projects or things I would have liked to see get done, but I am hopeful that we're moving in that direction. But I think one thing that's been great with Ward 4 is just the communication and the involvement has just grown so much. It's a very active ward. I mean, they all are, but I don't know. It's just, it's been a wonderful experience. I'm excited to have a little rest for a little bit and spend time with my family, but I'm sure I'll still stay involved here and there. I don't think I'll be able to help myself, but.
Well, you've definitely taken traffic safety in the council to a different level, so thank you for that.
Yes, and I just encourage everybody to keep on fighting for, you know, the kids and the elderly and the vulnerable populations who just want to go out and walk and feel safe. So.
Counselor Vogel?
Thank you. Thanks for the memories.
Anyone else? Counselor Lane?
So I didn't participate in this meeting very much. I didn't want to vote against anyone that was getting appointed. I would never want to discourage anyone. Just to address a little bit of what we've been dealing with and some things that were said in public comment and some mud, and I'm going to try to stay out of the low vibration land and not embarrass myself, as you texted me the other day, Bruce. My thing in this whole issue was rules. And what I learned is rules don't count here. It's all in how you interpret them. So I wasn't trying to throw mud on anybody. I'm not trying to, this wasn't a personal vendetta against anybody for the question of the residency of the council at large. I do appreciate you coming here and being present, and I will thank you for all your service. It's not easy, but rules to me are cut and dry, and it's the very fabric of what we do here. And I feel like the rules were skirted in this, and not intentionally, not nefariously. Our rules are, if you remove yourself from the city, you're done. I'm not trying to be the judge and jury. I know that's not our job. But when you say you've moved, you've moved. You've removed yourself from the city, to me. So I want to apologize if you feel like it was a personal thing, and I'm not trying to throw mud at you on the way out. That's never my intention. But we need to play by the rules. And what I've seen in 4 years on council has been disheartening, to say the least. I do this because I love my hometown. I love helping people. It's the only reason why I do what I do. So again, I don't want to end this on a bad note. I don't want to have ill feelings towards you. I wish you well in whatever you do. But we need to pay attention to our rules. I think we need to dig in on what we do and why we do it. I wish we could be, 11 of us could be like Christine. I think you've done a fantastic job. I feel like you're impartial. You listen to everybody, and that's what we need to do. We need to stop with the sides. Cut and dry. There's sides to everything here. So, and as I go out, that is my main ask, is that we stop with the gamesmanship, the alliances. Do what's right for the people. Do what's right for your constituents. I feel like we should look at our rules and play by them, quite frankly. I don't think that they've been adhered to, or they're just up for interpretation. I'm not a bad person. I'm just trying to be a servant to the people that I represent. And I've told people that I'm not here to represent the city. I'm here to represent the people. And we just need to keep that in mind. So.
Councilor Cameron?
Thank you. Yeah, I just think, again, thank you to Councilors Wallace and Vogel for your many years of service. And I think for those of us continuing, I think it's a chance to refresh a little bit, consider, our own, take on things, our own relationships with each other, our approach to issues, and, have a bit of a reset. I think we were successful in many ways this last term. I think it was Chancellor Bismarck of Germany who used the making sausage analogy back in the 1870s in Berlin, yeah, it can get contentious and complicated, and you know, nobody's always going to get, well, hardly anyone's going to get what they want, but if you try sometime, you might find you get what you need, which is the Rolling Stones. So I'm going to, personally, I look forward to the 2 new members coming on. I think they'll be good additions to us, and I'm sure most of you have talked to them. They've got lots of great questions and fresh perspective on things. So it's a chance for us all to reset. This is like a long-standing soap opera where we're into our 20th season as a city, or no, actually, I'll do the math again later. 170 years, maybe 1851 or something like that. So we're like one of those long-standing soap operas on TV. New characters leave, new people come on. We'll see what the plot writers have for us in store next term. But I do appreciate everybody. Whether you're staying on or departing. Everybody brings it, and there's a lot of passion, and sometimes our passions butt up against each other. But I think we generally get the people's business done, and let's recuperate a little bit and see what happens next term.
Councilor Khan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I guess for not standing up, maybe go to the order is not standing. But I do want to just also point out that it's not easy doing what we do. The minute we're elected, we do have targets on our back. It's just the way it is. And it could be a good thing or it could be a tough thing. I just really want to also thank everyone here. I've thanked Councilor Wallace and acknowledged her many times, and I know we always don't vote the same way or may not think the same way, but I appreciate the hard work. And same with Councilor Vogel. I really appreciate, and actually I've served probably more terms with you. And what we say in this room, it's not easy. I think we all shake when we know that we're saying something that's not easy debates, and we lose some of our debates, things that we feel so passionate about. It has nothing to do with sides. It has to do with being an individual, 11 people who come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. That's what we bring to the table, and I really value that and think that's really important. I do want to speak really quickly, though. I do think we are not the judge and jury of what people do. And I know we all kind of grapple when we do hear about things or people trying to say that we should be recusing, why we're not recusing. We go to the State Ethics Commission. We file what we need to. We go through those boards, but there will still be people that will try to take you out for your vote. And I want us just to be mindful that we do know, and if no one does, the MMA has excellent trainings on what the State Ethics Commission is available for, and what's a conflict of interest, and things like that. And I think that's, with new counselors coming, or all of us, refreshing that is not a bad thing. And I've mentioned to Council President, too, that having Karis North and their firm to maybe do that with the new counselors. But that's an important aspect that's on us. And I think all of us sitting here know how important that is. So that's why I want to say thank you.
Anything else? Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. I just have a couple things I want to say. First, I want to thank Councilor Wallace and Councilor Vogel from the bottom of my heart. What we do, to me, is very humbling. It's very honorable. And holding these positions is something that I don't think anyone takes lightly at all, and is really a great honor. And I thank you both for your service and your commitment and your dedication to this community, and wish you both well in what you do moving forward. On a personal note, this year has been, as my first term, a great deal of learning curves, but also a great deal of learning. So I look forward to my next term and with all of you and the newcomers, and I thank you all for a good year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Anyone else?
Motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
All those in, and we don't have to do a roll call. All those in favor, say aye.